are privileged to be joined at this time by one half of one of the hottest tag teams in pro wrestling right now and a true veteran of the game. He's the Fallen Angel, Christopher Daniels, and currently on TNA Impact, Thursday nights on Spike. He teams with Kazarian, and they are, at this point, the former World Tag Team Champions of the world, but I'm sure, Chris, you're looking to change that soon, coming up at the pay-per-view.
We're also the future World Tag Team Champions of the world and the best tag team in the business. That's 3 syllables. So, yes, you got all of that correct.
In the business. Where does that come from?
Business.
What's that a nod to? Where does that come from, pronouncing it that way?
That comes from me. I said it. Don't you recognize me? It's my voice.
Well, it's clever, but it sounds like you're channeling somebody who used to say it that way that you remember in the locker room years ago or something like that.
Nope, that's me. That's me. Like all my good ideas, they come right from my brain.
That's right. You've been involved, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you, in some of the absolute best matches in the history of TNA. And I wonder if you could pick a favorite for us.
Well, it's sort of cliche for me, but I mean, really the match that I feel was the best that I've ever had was the 3-way with AJ and Joe at Unbreakable 2005. Really just for the feeling I had right when the match was over. Like the way that the crowd sounded at that moment with the bell ring and we knew it was over, I think the three of us sort of knew that we had done something pretty special. And, you know, and it's a testament not just to Joe and AJ, but to TNA for putting us in that position where we were the main event. It was the first time that the X Division title had been defended in the main event of a pay-per-view for them. And the first time that it had ever taken precedence over the world title on a pay-per-view. So, I mean, they really gave us the ball, and they gave us the opportunity to prove that the X Division title deserved to be at the main event, and I think we went out and did that and more.
Certainly, yeah, that's absolutely one of the best matches of the 2000s, I think, without question. A wonderful match back in 2005. A connective thread there, Chris, that I've also note, and I don't know if it's something you think about, but, yourself, AJ, Samoa Joe, and currently over at the WWE, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, all of these guys came through the independent wrestling organization Ring of Honor, which you've worked for on and off for several years as well. Looking now in 2012 at kind of the original list of guys, the original roster of guys in the ROH locker room, have you been sort of surprised at how much they've become mainstays of all the televised wrestling companies?
I'm not surprised. I mean, I knew that it was just a matter of getting their breaks. I knew that they had the talent, and I think anybody would agree, anybody that watched Ring of Honor from 2002 to 2005, 2006, I think they knew that, those guys had the drive to be the best, and it was just a matter of certain things falling their way. I mean, so I'm not surprised at all, and I'm actually very happy that circumstances have come around where these guys like Daniel Bryan, guys like CM Punk, guys like Austin Aries now here in TNA, the opportunities came their way, and those guys, and and AJ and Joe and myself, those guys, we were people that all we needed was the break, all we needed was the opportunity. When the opportunity came around, we were going to be prepared for it, and I think that of all of us, I think you could say that was the case.
Sure, and coming up as you did, being such a centerpiece guy and such a workhorse on the independent circuit in wrestling for so many years, were there points in your career, Chris, where you felt like this was the break and then found out it wasn't, like more than once? I mean, has that happened a lot to you coming up in the game?
Well, honestly, I think the closest that situation ever came for me was being signed to WCW in the year 2000. I had a tryout match in California in January. I was given the opportunity. Kevin Sullivan, who was booking at the time, offered me a contract, and I signed the contract and had to fulfill my last dates that were not WCW, which was basically a tour of Japan. While I was on that tour of Japan, I found out that Kevin Sullivan was let go, and that was when Vince Russo and Eric Bischoff returned to the company, and wrestling historians recognized that day in Denver that they sort of hit the reset button. That was scheduled to be my debut under Kevin Sullivan's booking, and it just turned out to not be the case. So I showed up that night, and Vince Russo at the time didn't know who I was. Eric Bischoff at the time didn't know who I was. And so I was in the situation where I was under contract, but no one really knew who I was, didn't know what I brought to the table. I sort of languished with WCW for about 6 months, and then I was let go because I was making too much money at that point, believe it or not. So, yeah, that was the only time where I felt like I had broken through and then sort of had it taken away from me for reasons that weren't my own. But, you know, if it didn't happen that way, I mean, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to go through Ring of Honor. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to go through TNA. I still had a lot to do. After that period of time when I went back to Japan, I felt like I did a lot of my best work in terms of my international stuff. I had the opportunity to work for New Japan. So, I mean, you know, that cliche of a door closes and another door opens, it really happened for me that way. And, you know, even in spite of having been let go at that point, as down as I was at that point, I knew that if I just stuck to it and kept working hard, that I was going to get my break. I was always told by a friend of mine, his name is Mike Moran, who was one of the original Texas Hangmen. He told me that talent always rises to the top. And so I always, you know, kept that in mind whenever I had the bad breaks, whenever I had things sort of fall down in my career. I always knew that if I just kept working hard and kept a good reputation, that I was going to get another opportunity. And you know, my career shows that I got plenty. I got a lot of opportunities.
And talent rising to the top, it's an interesting thing because oftentimes, as you well know, working in the business as long as you have, particularly in the era in which you've worked, you know, there is kind of an acknowledgement that guys with a certain look, guys with a certain appearance, with a certain way of carrying themselves get a lot of opportunities, especially in the televised wrestling companies, whereas other guys who might not fit that mold but are exceptionally talented on the mic and in the ring have to work a little bit harder to get the same opportunities and have to get more opportunities to finally get the chance to break through and prove themselves. And going back to what we were just talking about, Chris, with that sort of original Ring of Honor stable, was there a feeling working back in those years with those guys that that you guys were all kind of doing something outside of the norm of what pro wrestling was looking for, and that was sort of enough? That was that was the end. That wasn't just the means to become a big star, but you know, you guys without, you know, the huge bodies and the over the top personalities were kind of just going to do this thing as your niche, as your calling card, as opposed to something that the longer you did that, the WWE and even TNA kind of conformed to those styles.
Well, I don't really look at it like that. I sort of saw it as trying to be ahead of the curve in terms of the changing of the business. Mm-hmm. I think that when we were going through Ring of Honor and that sort of style that was sort of inspired by the Super 8 in the ECWA, which is basically where all this sort of came from, that sort of hybrid Japanese lucha libre, what's now sort of called the X Division, that sort of like reckless, go a little bit farther for your entertainment sort of wrestling. I think that was what we were sort of doing, and I feel like despite the fact that it's not as prevalent on the United States television scene, you know, it's still a very big part of professional wrestling as a whole. And so there's so many guys that came up that ended up sort of starting in that basis of X Division, of Japanese, that hybrid style like I'm talking about, that went on to, you know, bigger and better things. Guys like AJ, guys like Joe, guys like CM Punk, you know, they've gone on, and because they were so well-rounded, because they started off or not started, but I mean, they became proficient in that style, they sort of added that to, you know, their basic wrestling, their, you know, sort of what everybody does. They became so well-rounded that it became sort of smart for them to get the world title. It became, you know, it became a smart business move to put the world championships on those guys at the times that they had them.
Yeah, it definitely, while it might have seemed nouveau and kind of cutting edge when it was being done, in the States at least, yeah, it definitely became a reason that you stood out, you know, amongst the cast of characters that the big wrestling companies, the televised companies had cobbled together. You had mentioned earlier, you know, being signed to the WCW contract when Kevin Sullivan had the book there, and then the changeover and kind of being odd man out. Talk about, and I'm sure you feel like your career in a lot of ways is a testament to this. People talk about how timing is everything in entertainment and in, you know, any form of showbiz, but in pro wrestling, it seems like timing is the only thing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, you know, you can argue that. You can argue it's not what you know, it's who you know. You know, I've had a little bit of both sort of been my downfall and my upbringing, so to speak. You know, I've had my whole TNA career sort of is based on the fact that I knew certain people from WCW who, gambled on me just for one show, and that one show sort of turned into a long-term thing for me. But at the same time, it's like you said, timing is everything. And if that, that story of being hired with Kevin Sullivan and being thrown out sort of with when Kevin Sullivan left at that time, I mean, that sort of says the story too. But it's sort of a combination of both, man. I've been fortunate enough to sort of avoid that bad timing like you're talking about. And I think it's just a matter of, being prepared when opportunity, if you're always prepared for opportunity, sooner or later that opportunity is going to come around.
Sure.
And, especially for me in the last couple of years, when I was let go from TNA, I wasn't sure what my career was going to be. I was fortunate enough to go back to Ring of Honor for a good year. And, circumstances in TNA that led to my return, like there was no way I could have predicted that those things were going to happen in that order that was going to make it feasible for the booking committee at that time to say, well, you know what, Christopher Daniels is available. Let's bring Christopher Daniels back. And not just because I was talented, but because it fit their storyline. It made sense in a real organic way to bring me back when they did. So, I mean, like you said, timing can be bad or good. And I've had both instances in my career where, it's benefited me and it's hurt me.
Have you had many moments or any moments, Chris, where you've seriously considered hanging it up when, an opportunity fell through or you found yourself thinking, what am I going to do next?
No, I never really thought about it. I never thought about, like my friend would call it, burning the boots.
Yeah.
When things fell through. I never thought of it in that respect. Just because, like, I went back to that, what Mike told me, if I kept at it, I would get opportunities. And, I've been very fortunate that the opportunities that I've had have led to long-term gigs, long-term commitments with both TNA and Ring of Honor. I was still having fun. I've always said if I wasn't having fun, it just hurts too much to not be fun. As far as like the drudgery of a 9-to-5 job or anything like that, if that's what this became, I would definitely leave. But it hasn't been that. I mean, even the travel, all the detriment of being a performer, being a professional wrestler on the road, all of the bad things or all of the negative things that I see, it still sort of washes away the minute I'm in the ring, the minute I walk down the aisle, and that's the fun of it. And when I lose that, that's when I'm going to finally get out of it. As long as I can stay healthy and perform at the level that I want to perform at, and I'm still having fun, I'm still going to keep doing it. My aim was to get to 20 years as far as a career. That's January. January is going to be 20 years. I started training in January of 1993. And as I look at it now, I don't see my hanging up the boots, my, getting out of the ring in the near future. So, who knows how long it's going to be until I finally decide to hang it up.
It strikes me, Chris, that in some ways when you get into the business and when you start developing your in-ring skills and start getting comfortable as an athlete in there, that keeping it fun is maybe in a large part kind of adding new moves, adding new twists as far as what you're doing athletically in the ring, physically in the ring. But being the veteran you are, does there come a point where keeping it fun has a lot less to do with what you do in the ring because you've got that mastered and more your character, more the way you carry yourself?
A little bit of both. I mean, I still try to think of different things to do or different things to try physically, athletically, but at the same time, it's really just a matter of taking each show that you're on and trying to make it fresh for yourself, even if it's, like the idea of wrestling like AJ. Like AJ and I have wrestled so often now that, when I find out that he and I are wrestling, it could be, I could look at it like, oh, well, here we go again. It can be redundant. But at the same time, it's a different audience. And so I try to bring something different, whether it's, what I do on my way to the ring, what I say on the microphone, just a different thing to do physically. It's just a matter of trying to find that freshness, something different there that makes the show that we do in Texas different from the show that we did in St. Louis the week before. So it's really on me to try and find, whether it's physical or mental, something character-based or something move-based. I think the older that I get, though, it's more. I'm more open to changing a bunch of different things. More open to just. It's not just what different move can I do today. It's how can I look at this in a different aspect. How can I make people remember this particular part of the night of the show. How can I make them remember what I did versus everything else, what they're watching in the course of an evening.
Well, having watched you for a good part of your career, at least, the parts of your career where there's been a camera rolling and distribution of your matches and things like that, I have to say that lately in this current character that you have, I sense you have a swagger and you feel a lot like looser than before. I don't know if that's the exact word, and maybe it's just the heel persona you're taking on, which is really fun to watch, I have to say, every Thursday on TNA. But do you feel like a little looser and freer to experiment these days? And if so, what's behind that?
Yeah, I definitely do. I feel like, and I can attribute it to a more collaborative effort behind the scenes with guys like Eric Bischoff, guys like Jason Hervey, Hulk Hogan, the rest of the creative team at TNA. I feel like in the last year and a half, I've had much more of a give and take relationship creatively than in the past, where it was a lot of do what we say, not and nothing else. So definitely that's it. I feel like I can go out there and experiment. I can go out there and try some things, and I'll get positive feedback when it's warranted, and I'll get negative criticism when I earned it. You know what I mean? And as long as I go out there and try and do something, I feel even if I fail, at least if I've committed 100% to something, no one's going to get upset at me for trying something. So I think that's really been, at least for me, the reason behind it. Where just that confidence, like you said, I've been much more confident to try different things, and I've just been very fortunate that most of the things that I've sort of thrown against the wall have stuck. Little things like the Appletini, or the wearing the scarf when I'm wearing a T-shirt, or the glove, the GFY glove that I wear when I wrestle. Like these little things that I thought, wouldn't it be neat? Wouldn't it be clever if I did this? And just stuck with it. Now, everybody asks me where my Appletini is, and everybody wants to know where they can get the glove. And, these little things that I thought, wouldn't this be a little funny addition to me as a character? And they've sort of stuck, and I've been very fortunate that most of these ideas that I've had have been, reasonably clever, at least to me anyway.
Sure. You mentioned the Appletini. I was going to ask you about that. It's funny that you foreshadowed it. One of the things we've seen kind of sprinkled into your character is when they cut to you backstage and you're doing a promo, you've got an Appletini in your hand. What is that? What are we seeing there about Christopher Daniels?
That was just literally, I had an idea for a promo where I was going to drink a toast to us, and I thought to myself, what would be a clever, funny drink for me to drink that would, get everybody sort of laughing or chuckling or booing me or whatever, because, the tough guys drink Jack Daniels, but what would a guy like me drink on television? I thought Appletini. So, and it just so happened that it happened, the first time I used it was the promo that I cut at Slammiversary, and then in the weeks right after that, I just had opportunity to have that drink in my hand and decided to stick with it rather than just make it a one-off. I tried to make it something that stuck, and slowly but surely it has, to the point where now, when I'm about to do something, people backstage are reminded me, hey, don't forget, grab Appletini, there's a good spot for it. Jason Hervey, for example, one of the guys that is our producer backstage that does a lot of the behind-the-scenes, the backstage vignette style stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's been very helpful in terms of collaboration as far as, like, wouldn't it be funny if, or wouldn't it be clever if we did it this way? And he's been someone that I've had a lot of fun working with in the past 8-9 months in terms of bringing a wacky character sort of to life. He's been very helpful and very supportive in that respect.
On the Appletini front, Chris, is that just a persona thing, or does Christopher Daniels enjoy an Appletini or two in his personal life?
I don't do a whole lot of drinking when I'm away from wrestling. I've got kids at home, and there's not Appletinis flowing in the kitchen while I'm pouring cereal for the young man. But I have on occasion had one or two, and they're not too bad. I don't drink as many as I do on television, just for the sake of my liver. But
Sure.
It's something that I've tried and something I've enjoyed in moderation, like most people should.
Absolutely. The triple jump moonsault, one of your trademark moves. You call it the best moonsault ever, where you spring off
Right?
the middle rope, then off the top. Where did that come from? How did that develop?
I was in Chicago. This is back when I was training. This is probably in the mid-'90s, maybe '95. There was a young kid that came up from Mexico that was traveling through Chicago, and he just wanted to train at the Windy City Pro Wrestling where I was trained. He just wanted to train at the facility for a couple of weeks, and because he was so well versed in the lucha libre style, he did a lot of acrobatic stuff. And one of the things that I saw him do was springing from the second to the top and then hitting a crossbody. And I had been enamored with trying to do a moonsault ever since I started training. I was a big fan of the Great Muta when his character was prevalent in the NWA and in World in WCW. So that was something that I just sort of morphed together. I thought it was a clever way to go into the moonsault when the moonsault seemed to be something that everybody did. It was just my way of making it different. And I've been very fortunate that not a lot of people have attempted or tried to copy that or that particular way to get into a maneuver. Like I said, I've been very fortunate that no one else has sort of done it, so it's sort of stuck with me over the past 15 years, I think, since I've been doing it. So.
Yeah, absolutely associated with you. And you mentioned the great Muta, Kaiji Muto. Fans who remember him from '89 and '90 in WCW remember those spectacular moonsaults. Today, however, he's got an awfully difficult time getting around. His knees are shot in a large part because of the impact on the knees of the moonsault. Has that been something you've been able to protect yourself against, or have the knees taken quite a banging over the years?
My knees have taken a banging, but not from the moonsault. It's been a very I had this discussion with Samoa Joe. Where we were talking about Muta, and we were sort of surprised how bad his knees were versus how not so bad my knees were, comparatively speaking. And Joe, who's very perceptive and very observant, he pointed out that Muta had much less of a hang time. Like when I do mine, I usually go up, and I usually have a good deal of height, where Muta would just go from the top rope and go out. And he had such a snap to it that it looked like it swung his knees around very quickly, and as a result, it just rammed his legs into the mat, which is probably where all the problems came around. For me, I've had such a clean hang time on most of my moonsaults, and I'm landing sort of straight up and down, where I can sort of spread the impact over my forearms, my hands, my chest, if I'm doing it without a body underneath me. So, and I've never led with my knees. I never put my knees down except in accidental circumstances where I've banged my knee on the few occasions that I heard it doing the moonsault. So I think that's part of it, or that's pretty much it. I mean, the fact that I had such a different, a different trajectory when I would do mine has sort of prolonged my knees, and I've been very fortunate for that, to sort of be able to continue to do the moonsault as much as I do.
When it comes to high-flying moves in pro wrestling, I'd be interested in your thoughts, because some guys are just so good at it that you never get that feeling watching in the pit of your stomach that they're going to crash, and really hurt themselves. AJ, I mean, the things he's done in his career as far as acrobatics and high-risk dives and things like that, and even Jeff Hardy, you don't ever feel like they're going to break their necks. Other guys can do things half as dangerous, and you're terrified for them for some reason. Maybe it's just the way they take off. I don't know. Why do you think for some guys flying is so simple and so natural, and for other guys when they do it, it seems to be a lot more kind of risky?
I think it's a comfort level. I think it's the confidence within the character or within the performer themselves. I've always been a very strong proponent of, if you can't do it 10 times out of 10, don't try it. And that's one of the reasons why I don't do more high flying. I used to do a lot more trying things in the ring, and I realized that was a sure way to get hurt in the end. So I sort of minimized the amount of high flying I could do, and I sort of whittled it down to 2 or 3 things that I could do every night of the week, twice in a match if I had to, and that sort of has prolonged my career as well. I think AJ and Jeff Hardy, those 2 guys specifically, I think they're part of that same cloth, where they don't do anything that they can't do every time. barring, catastrophic accident, they're never, I'm sure AJ is very rarely so tired that he can't springboard, so tired that he can't, do his shooting star or his 450 or whatever you name. I'm almost positive that AJ, if he had to do it every match, every night of the week, he could do it. And once you get that confidence, there's a relaxation that comes with it, where that's where you're most safe. When you're relaxing, you're comfortable doing it, the likelihood of getting hurt doing it just almost disappears completely.
It is quite amazing how comfortable wrestlers can train their bodies to be, to just launch themselves out of the ring down to the concrete. It really is one of, I think, the unsung brilliant things about the art of pro wrestling. And in your story, a big part of it, Chris, or at least a part that's always noted, and you talked earlier about that point in your career where you had the WCW contract. On Monday Nitro, you wrestled Mike Modest and tried to do a springboard moonsault off the top rope. Slipped up. I think the foot didn't plant right, or you didn't push off, or something happened, and you landed right on the top of your head. It was ugly. You were able to get up, recover, and finish the match, but there was some damage there. I wonder if that changed anything about your habits or your outlook on how to go about things in the ring.
Well, definitely. I mean, that was one of those times, that was actually the second time that I was signed to WCW. That was the match that got me signed, but that was a tryout, that particular match, and that was a point where I sort of ignored my own advice about doing something as long as I could do it all the time. Running up and jumping into the top rope was something that I had done in the past, but I wasn't 100% comfortable doing it, and it happened with that one time on television with the red light on. That I didn't hit it 100%, and that was, that was what, caused me to slip. That's why I slipped and hurt myself like I did. And I mean, that if I ever think, oh, well, maybe I'll try this in the ring and see how it goes, I can just look back on that and decide that that's probably not the best avenue of action.
Is there a match that you would say, Christopher Daniels, is your best match that people haven't seen, or one that you really love or are proud of that people don't put on the short list when they think of great Christopher Daniels matches?
I don't know. It's hard, to quantify your favorite stuff or what you think is good. I mean, I've had such a good time working with some of the talented guys that I've had the opportunity to wrestle with in my career. For me to say, oh, well, this match with Kurt Angle was better than this match with Christian Cage, it's just different. They're different. They're different. It's hard to quantify better or worse in that respect, because it's easier for me to view it as just a good time overall.
Well, let me ask you why you
don't really have matches. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I'm glad you put it that way, because do wrestlers look at it that way? Like, for some reason, they're very kind of sophisticated, I guess is the word. Some might call them smart marks. People who, watch pro wrestling with a very critical eye and assign, like, star ratings like you would a movie to matches and things like that. It seems like that's something fans do in assessing what you guys do, but the wrestlers don't always feel that way about their matches. They know when they have a fantastic one, but it always seems like there's kind of a gap between the reasons fans, acclaim a match and the reasons guys who are actually in the ring and do it for a living feel good about a match.
Well, yeah, I mean, because in the end, first of all, it's such an objective or subjective,
yeah,
subjective sort of subject. Like why you like this match versus why I like it, why anybody likes it. In the end, this is our job, and our job is to entertain, and our job is to tell the story that the creative team has decided to tell, and sort of tell it with the tools that we have at our disposal, which is our character, our moveset, our physical beings. And, how do you say, oh, this story was told best by Austin Aries and Jeff Hardy, or this story was told best by Kazarian and Daniels versus AJ and Angle. We look at it as, the people left entertained. They got their money's worth. We walked out of the ring without being hurt. We got paid. So these are the things that we check. We check the list to make sure, okay, well, this happened. We got paid. We didn't get hurt. The people left happy. The story was told. Those are the important things to us. When we start worrying about, was this match better than the last match I had, or was this match 5 stars or whatever, then you're delving into ego, and that's not really productive for any of us to get into in that respect.
And it seems like when you do have those 5-star matches that everyone agrees are great stuff, when you hear the guys in the match sometimes, and the rare chances we get talk about performing the match, there wasn't necessarily anything special about they didn't go through the curtain that night, unless it's like a gimmick, like a 60-minute match that's promoted as something that's going to be great, and so you work to it. But oftentimes it seems, Chris, and I wonder if your career you feel this is true. The great matches, the ones that stand the test of time, it just clicks in the moment. It's not that coming out before you came out through the curtain, you were going to go for a 5-star match.
Yeah, and I think one facet of whether a match is revered or whatnot that people don't always understand is the crowd, the way the crowd reacts, the way the crowd responds. That adds to a match, and I think that's one of the reasons why our 3-way match with me and Joe and AJ got such a response, was because we were in front of probably one of the best crowds that we had at that time, and they were hungry to see what we were showing them. I've seen matches, for example, I've seen matches in Ring of Honor where I thought, they were blowing the roof off the place, and the crowd at that moment wasn't as receptive as other times. And so, like, I've seen matches where I thought everything was perfect except the response of the fans at that moment. And those are the matches that I think people look back and go, oh, well, that was a great match. That's 4.5 stars. It was almost perfect. And they don't realize that the guys did everything right. It didn't click for whatever reason. The crowd wasn't, whether it was, a long night and a last match and a long night, or they've seen so many things, you never can tell. And that's one of those, when the stars align, that's one of the things that has to be in the right position as well as the crowd, and how they respond and how they react to the story you're telling, and how the wrestlers react to the reactions of the crowd.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, so many things not related necessarily to what the guys are doing in the ring go into the response of the crowd. In a lot of ways, guys seem to be judged by what kind of rise they can get out of the people, but it's not always an even playing field when it comes to getting a reaction out of folks. And we appreciate the extended time, Christopher. It's a great talk, helping us understand kind of what you've learned about the business in your long career. Do you feel like if you never get to WWE for a significant run, that you'll feel like something is missing from your career? I mean, I think you're 42 now. Maybe it's something you think about and are sort of, in your head resolving.
I'm sort of resolved. I mean, I know guys that are 10 years younger than me that have gone to the WWE and been told they're too old. And I actually had this discussion with someone backstage where I said, I'm not too old to be in the WWE, but I'm certainly too old to start. Mm-hmm. And I think the way politically that WWE and TNA sort of view each other, there's no way that I would come out of TNA. If my contract were to end tomorrow, there's no way that I would go to the WWE or be able to go to the WWE and start on television. It's not the way that it was when WCW and WWF were going head to head, where it was like trading members from a baseball team. It's not like that anymore. So I mean, I've pretty much resolved that I'll never get an in-ring career in the WWE, and I'm fine with that. I mean, because it would be very easy for me to look at my career as saying that I failed in this one aspect. But if I'm honest with myself, if I take a step back and sort of look at the whole picture, when I started this in '93, I literally just wanted to be able to feed my family with the money I made wrestling. And I mean, in that respect, I've succeeded 1,000 times over. And, when I look at the things that I have done, the things that I have accomplished, the places I've wrestled, the people I've wrestled with, the people I've worked for, the people I've worked with, to look at that as anything but a success would be very myopic. I could not look at my career as a failure in that respect. And so I don't, and I'm just thankful for all the things that I've had, all the breaks that went my way, and all the opportunities that I had the opportunity to take advantage of. If it wasn't for any of those things, I would have had a much different life, and I'm pretty happy with the way it is right now.
Sure. Picking up on something you said there, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong in terms of reading into what you mean. You talked about the TNA WWE politics and how it's different from the WCW WWF wars of the, at a time when both were ultra competitive and going at each other head to head in terms of the ratings. I think now maybe there's more of a mentality maybe over WWE where we're not going to sign a guy to TNA and push him to the moon because that makes TNA seem like that much bigger, right? To get a guy in right away, straight off TNA television, and make him a huge star on our TV show, it is not like the way we view it. We view you as getting right in line with everybody else that we want to develop. Is that the thing? Is there sort of this acknowledgement that if you sign a long-term TNA contract, you're sort of ceding your ability to be a big star day one in WWE?
Well, yeah, I just think that's their mentality. I think that they, ever since WCW and ECW, or WCW and ECW closed, I feel like WWF feels that there's no competition in that respect. And so for them to, if they were to take someone like AJ Styles or Samoa Joe, or the people that, most fans are always wanting to go to WWE, yeah, I feel like if WWF were to take them and hotshot them to television right away, it would definitely give a bit of credence to TNA as a promotion and as a place to start, or whatever you want to look at it as. And so I think WWE has, in their mindset, sort of erased that possibility by saying we're not going to take somebody straight off the show. So yeah, I think that's the mentality. At least that's how I interpret the mentality. It's not like I've ever heard Johnny Ace tell me that face to face or anything, but I sort of look at the way the landscape of professional wrestling is, and it certainly seems that way. So,
we ever going to see Curry Man again?
It depends. He works at a Kinko's in Morioka, and he's a bit of a drunk. So I mean, it would depend on him getting back on the wagon and sort of getting his head straight. But never say never. Except for that one time that he dated most of the knockouts, and none of them knew it. Like that he dated a bunch of them at the same time, and none of them knew that he was dating around. If that ever came out, I'm sure he wouldn't be welcome back. But.
What would Curry Man's drink of choice be anyway?
Curry Man has always been a sake guy, but he doesn't like it warm. He likes it cold. I don't understand that. I thought the best way to drink it was warm, but he's always sort of danced to the beat of his own drum, ironically enough.
Does he use the same plastic treatment that you see Chinese restaurants when they put dishes out and they make them plastic so they never go spoiled? Is that how he preserves the curry on the top of his head?
I think he just has it cryogenically embalmed from match to match.
Embalmed?
I always wondered. Yeah, I always wondered.
Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, that was, I think, Curry Man interrupting there. I think
it could be. We could be on a three-way call here.
I don't think he was down with that line of questioning. So we'll move on. And just a couple more here, and then we'll get you out of here. Thank you so much for the extended attention. We really do appreciate it. Claire Lynch, what happened to that storyline? What's the deal there?
Claire decided to leave before the end of the storyline. She wasn't. She was a little bit disappointed with the way the character was being portrayed, and she felt like it was affecting her outside work, and so she left. So, unfortunately for us, we sort of put our trust in someone that didn't really understand the workings of our business, and
right.
So that sort of affected it. But
I mean, did you have decent hopes? Because that was for weeks, that was the centerpiece storyline in TNA, and it definitely seemed like on the other end, it really would have highlighted yourself and Kazarian in a very good way.
Yeah, well, I feel like it did a lot of the things that we wanted it to do. It wasn't 100% perfect, but I feel like at the end of that whole storyline, Frankie and I came out of it looking more evil than we did going in, and that was sort of the point. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with AJ. The AJ came out of it looking more of the hero than he did going in, and that was what we wanted to do. So, in terms of our character, we came out of it the way we wanted to. It didn't go 100% the way we had written it down, but I mean, whatever goes exactly the way you plan it.
And finally, Christopher Daniels, what's the outlook for you, if you even look this far ahead? I don't know, maybe at this point in your career it's something you think about. a bucket list? Is there anything like that? Is there maybe one thing, maybe 10 things, I don't know, that you want to make sure you get done before the end of your professional wrestling career?
Well, I mean, the one thing that sort of avoided me for these almost 20 years has been the World Championship.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've learned, even especially in the past couple of months or the last year or two, when you see guys like Mark Henry, who had a very long career before he finally became world champion, or you look at someone like Austin Aries, who came out of nowhere and became world champion, there's opportunities there. It's just a matter of hitting your stride and getting the chances. And right now I feel like the character that I'm portraying, the type of wrestler that I am, it would be very easy for me to become world champion if given the opportunity. Now it's just a matter of, does the people in power, do the people in power feel that same way? And that's sort of something that it's up to me to sort of prove, like this would be a good business move or whatnot. So, I mean, that's something that I still, after almost 20 years, sort of hold out hope that that's going to happen for me. Just sort of as the icing on the cake. Like I said earlier, if I take a step back and look at all the things that I have done, it's been a great career. But, truthfully, I would like to get an opportunity to say that I was a world champion, even just for a little bit. But, that's not up to me. It's not a decision that I make, and we'll see how it goes.
It's something we look forward to seeing developing. Christopher Daniels joining us this week on Mouthpiece Wrestling for a great in-depth talk about coming up in the sport, and he has been involved in so many different facets of the industry and worked so many different places with so many different types of opponents that there's a lot of insight there. And we're grateful to you, Christopher Daniels, for taking the time. Best of luck every Thursday night on TNA with your partner, Kazarian.
Thanks. We don't need it, but thank you.
Okay.